Hey, what's up guys? It's Luke, Black Sheep 217 on Pokemon the Trading Card Game online and at Zoom Battle Gym on Facebook. I'd love to be your friend on either of those sites, play a game of Pokemon with you, or just talk about Pokemon because I love it. I've just really gotten back into the game recently, and I'm checking out all the theme decks they have, and then actually right now I'm creeping into Standard, trying out some Standard decks as well. But I used to play a long time ago when the original game came out way back in the very late 90s, and played competitively. It was a lot of fun. It's awesome to get back in and see how the game has changed, how it's different, and how it's the same. Well, today I'm going to be talking about a very powerful theme deck. I think this is one of the best theme decks, and if you want to be very competitive and you want a deck that's really versatile, this deck may be the one you want to choose. I'm talking about Soaring Storm. Soaring Storm is the Dragonite deck. So Dragonite is the main sort of Pokemon in this deck. He is very powerful. He has a lot of hit points, and his attack does a ton of damage. Plus, he's got an ability that really just allows this deck to power up quickly to do tons of damage. Besides him, there are other Pokemon in this deck that can do tremendous amounts of damage and that can stay in the active spot for you. I hate, personally, playing against this deck. I feel like in the hands of a strong player, this deck is very difficult to beat with any of the theme decks, and that includes, any of the Charizard ones, any of the other ones, even the ones, that I highly recommend and love. This deck is so strong, and I feel like very few decks can really match up with it toe to toe. So just like in all of my longer deck reviews, this one is going to have a section about the Pokemon. We'll be talking about the Pokemon in this deck, which ones are the best, which ones aren't so good, which ones are more situational, so we'll discuss those. We're also going to talk about some wishes I have for this deck. What do I wish this deck had in it? We're going to talk about strategies and strengths and weaknesses. If you want to jump to any of those topics, check in the description below. Because in the description below, I'm going to have chapter titles. Just click on the numbers and they'll bring you to where you want to be in this full-length review of Soaring Depths. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go check out the Pokemon. And as always, I've broken the Pokemon up into a few different categories. We have Pokemon that are just straight up good Pokemon. These are the awesome Pokemon in this deck. Then we have decent Pokemon. These are okay Pokemon. Then we have situational Pokemon that are good in certain situations but not really good otherwise. And then sadly we have the lame section, which is Pokemon that are not very good at all. So let's head over to the computer, get the deck on the screen, and check out the cards. We're going to start with the good Pokemon in this deck, and we're going to start right off with Thundurus. Thundurus is a basic Pokemon, basic here, with 120 hit points. It has a Thunderous Gale as its initial attack that only costs 2 colorless energy, and it does 20 damage. Now, if it just did 20 damage, it would be kind of a mediocre attack. But if his buddy, Tornadus, is on the bench, it adds 50 more damage, making it a 70 damage attack for just 2 colorless energy. That's pretty strong. Not just pretty strong, that's very strong. And he has a secondary attack called Raging Thunder, also very powerful. It deals 120 damage for 3 energy, 2 lightning, and a colorless. Now, it does have a drawback in that it does 40 damage to one of your own benched Pokemon as well. But you know what? I would trade that any day. 120 damage to an opposing Pokemon, and it just takes 40 damage to one of the Pokemon on the bench. And if you don't have a Pokemon on the bench, then I guess it doesn't matter. But that's a very powerful attack. You can get that attack up very, very quickly. And being a basic Pokemon, there are cards like Pokemon Fan Club in this deck that can get Thundurus out. And his friend Tornadus. Since you can see, they have the synergy with each other. They work together really well. If one's on the bench while the other one's in the active spot, you're going to see that these guys work together so well. You're going to want to have both of them together because they are a dynamic duo that just wrecks. So naturally, the next Pokemon I'm going to talk about is Tornadus. He goes so well with Thundurus. Tornadus has a Knuckle Punch that it only costs 1 colorless energy and does 20 damage. That's a great way just to poke at your opponent early on. And then his secondary attack is the Thundurus Tornado, which does 80 damage for 3 colorless. So not nearly the 120 that Thundurus does. But rather than inflicting damage on yourself, this attack does 20 damage to each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. So it can really take out or soften up the opponent's bench, or even take out opponents that have really weak Pokemon sitting on the bench. That's an amazing ability. So you're definitely going to want to have Tornadus and Thundurus out together because they complement each other and they build each other up and they make each other so much more powerful. And I will tell you, it's not even that hard to get both of them out at the same time. There are ways to do it, and you can do that especially early in the game. And if you can do that early, you're going to have a step up on your opponent, because so many times I'm playing these two, they're out, I'm dead, I'm knocked out. Now our next Pokemon is Chinchu, and Chinchu, I was debating whether he's going to be a good Pokemon or maybe a decent Pokemon. I just gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I put him into the good Pokemon. I think he's actually a very, very good starting Pokemon to have. He has an attack called Pound that takes off 10 damage. That's not that great, but his Spark attack actually does 10 damage to the active Pokemon, and you get to choose 10 damage to 2 of the opponent's Pokemon as well. I always like Pokemon that can do indirect damage to the bench. That's a very powerful ability, and so, without their Pokemon even doing anything, they're receiving damage. And so when they come out, they're going to be easier to knock out. There are so many Pokemon that are like, where this comes up often, where you can hit for 120 damage, but they have 130 HP, right? And so you're kind of like, I wish I could just have either a little bit more hit, damage potential, or I wish they had a little bit less HP. Well, this is the way to do it. With Chinchu, you can bring down their bench just that much so that they can be easier to knock out later. So Chinchu is a really good option for that. Lantern. So Chinchu actually becomes Lantern. Lantern is a stage 1. And Lantern has some interesting abilities that I think are really scary. He has energy grounding. Okay, energy grounding. So if it says when one of your Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, you may move a basic energy from that Pokemon to this Pokemon. So he actually takes in energy from knocked out Pokemon. Whenever you can get energy onto one of your Pokemon without having it be a card play, because you're limited to just 1 energy per turn, typically, you are doing well. This deck does this so well, we'll find out it does it even better later, but that is such a bonus where that energy doesn't go into the discard pile, it goes onto Lantern. And Lantern has an amazing ability with energy that is on him. He has the Lightning Strike. For 3 energy, 2 lightning, 1 colorless, he can do 70 damage. Pretty good attack. But you can discard all of the lightning energy and it does 70 more damage. So it does 140 damage if you discard the lightning energy. Now, if you have 3 lightning energy, unfortunately you have to discard all of them. But think about it, this deck has water and lightning energy in it. So if you have lightning lightning, and water, you only have to discard the lightning, and you can do 140 damage. That is really, really powerful. And if you've been softening up your opponents with Chinchu, and, you know, it's later on in the game, you can start knocking Pokemon out with that amount of damage. So Lantern is very, very scary. If I were you, I would just let him sit back there, be the energy soak for when Pokemon get knocked out from your side. Let him gather that energy and then just completely decimate your opponent when Lantern comes out. Besides having abilities to like get energy onto your Pokemon, which this deck does exceedingly well, it's also really important to have cards where you can actually have energy to put down. Pidgeotto is evolved from Pidgey, and this guy is great. He has Gust, which is not anything to write home about. It's a double colorless attack that does 30. I wouldn't suggest really powering up Pidgeotto unless you were sort of in a pinch and you really needed to. I would just sit Pidgeotto on the bench and use Airmail all day long. Airmail says, once during your turn before you attack, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them in your hand. And then put the other one on the bottom of your deck. So it's like every turn you get to pick 2 cards, pick one, and put one back. You're not discarding it. It just goes back in the bottom of your deck. You can get it back some other time. But you're just drawing and drawing and drawing. So your hand size gets to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And bigger hand size means more options. There's no hand size limit in Pokemon, so you can have as much as you want. Card drawing is huge in this game. If you can get a card advantage on your opponent, you're going to be just that much more successful than they are. And Pidgeotto can provide that. Another Pokemon that provides cards for you is Alolan Grimer. Look at his first ability, or first attack ability. It's collect. Just collect 2 cards. Have him come out and just start collecting cards for you. Another strong and good basic Pokemon with 80 hit points. 80 hit points is your above average basic Pokemon. Now, he also has Sludge Bomb. He also takes 2 energy to retreat, so those are a little bit negatives, but I would not really worry about it. I wouldn't even use energy for him, like for Sludge Bomb especially. Not a necessary thing. Just have him draw cards until he can be switched out or retreated, or if you need to use him as a little bit of a meat shield, he can do that as well. But to draw 2 cards every turn is it's so powerful, because when we saw Pidgeotto could draw the 2 cards, but we would have to put one back. Nice to get one at least, but you know what? Grimer's like, I'm just going to take both of the cards. I don't have to look at anything. I'm just going to take 2. Now, it's not an ability, because the ability for Pidgeotto, that's a whole nother ballgame. But if you had Grimer and Pidgeotto out, you're getting 3 cards extra per turn if you're going to use that as the collect as an attack. So that's a really good mechanic. You have those guys out at the beginning of the game, you're just going to have so many more cards than your opponent has, which means you have so many more choices, and choices in Pokemon are so lethal. So it's something that you're going to want to make sure you can do. So Grimer is a great starter. And the very best in this deck is Dragonite. We've already talked about a lot of great Pokemon here, but Dragonite takes the cake. If you can evolve up to Dragonite, you are doing so well. Dragonite, first of all, let's look at the HP. HP of 160. That is a difficult Pokemon to take out. There are very few Pokemon that can one-shot Dragonite. Okay, we're talking about the Charizards that are powered up. We're talking about Galarian Surfetch'd. But most Pokemon cannot just one-shot Dragonite. He's that powerful. He's also got a Dragon Impact that can deal 170 damage. Again, that takes out just about any other Pokemon in the themed format. 170 damage is ridiculous. Now, it does take 4 energy to power up, and you're like thinking, oh man, that's like 4 energy, that's 4 turns. No. Hurricane Charge says, once during your turn before you attack, you may attach Water Energy card, Lightning, or one of each from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. He essentially can power himself up and get his attack ready well before 4 turns. Meaning he's going to have this damage potential of 170. As long as you have cards in your hand, energy in your hand, you can bust this attack out and your opponent's not going to last very long. Furthermore, if you don't want Dragonite to power himself up, it says on the Hurricane Charge, to your Pokemon in any way you like. It doesn't say Dragonite. So you can power up Lantern, you can power up Thundurus, Tornadus, you can power up anybody you want and have them do the attacking and have Dragonite just sit there and smile and laugh. That's so cool. That is amazing. So Dragonite, if you see Dragonite out there, when I see Dragonite there, I'm like 9 out of 10, I'm done. I don't know if I can win because of the sheer power and abilities that Dragonite has. This is a worthy contender for best Pokemon in the Theme Deck format. I mean, seriously. Dragonite is so good. Okay, we're moving to decent Pokemon. There's just a couple of Pokemon in this category. The first one we're going to talk about is Pidgey. Pidgey, I was waffling between having Pidgey in the good Pokemon or the decent Pokemon, and Pidgey hits the decent spot for a couple of reasons. First of all, Pidgey only has 50 hit points. I like the basic Pokemon to have it at least 60 to start off. Makes me feel a little bit better, especially since he's weak to lightning. You might watch out. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much, but he could get one-shotted if somebody could deal 30 damage and was a lightning Pokemon. So that could be a concern. And his Gust attack 20 for 2 is kind of just ho-hum. So that's why he's not in the good category, but I do like Pidgey as a starter if you don't have anybody else because of the collect ability. Collect, or I should say attack, because when you use it, you can draw a card. And so this card, like I said, or this deck, like I said, has so many opportunities to like increase your hand size a lot. Pidgey's part of that process where if you need somebody to help you draw cards, Pidgey is a good choice early in the game if you don't have Grimer or if you don't have anything else. Pidgey is very nice to help you get your deck going. My other Pokemon in the decent category is our friend Dratini, the basic Pokemon that leads up to Dragonite. So Dratini, you know, I don't recommend having Dratini out. He has a jump on attack which could potentially do 40 damage, which is actually not bad. 40 damage is pretty strong. With an Aqua Lift ability where if he has water energy on him, he can retreat for free. Free retreat is really great. It's just you don't want Dratini to take damage and you don't want him to get knocked out because you want Dragonite to eventually come out. So Dratini is decent, but I really wouldn't use Dratini unless we really, really had to. I would probably, and there are so many other great Pokemon in this deck where I just would try to leave him out of the fighting as much as possible. But if you had to, if he was the only one in your hand and you had to start him, I wouldn't be too scared because he's okay with his 60 HP, he has an okay attack, and he can retreat for free with some water energy. So you're not stuck if you have Dratini. Okay, we're moving out of the decent Pokemon section and we're going into the situational section, and I only have one Pokemon here and it's Pidgeotto. I'm actually a little confused why Pidgeot's even in this deck. Like, I really don't think Pidgeot needs to be here. Although Pidgeot does have attacks that I think are tremendously interesting and add a huge variety and surprise factor to this particular deck. but the times you would use them are very situational, and that's why he's a situational Pokemon. So the first is Whirlwind for 60. 2 colorless for 60 damage is, hey, I would do that all day long. It says your opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of their benched Pokemon. So it's something where, it kicks the opponent out of the active spot. And that could be useful, but it also could be a detriment that you don't want. Because maybe you're trying to knock out the Pokemon in the active spot. If that Pokemon gets kicked out, they're not active anymore, and, well, that could be trouble for you, right? If they bring in someone that they had wanted to get in instead. So, it's very, like I said, situational. So you don't know when Whirlwind will be really good or not. But the next attack, Spin Storm, it says your opponent puts their active Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their hand. That could be a game-winning move right there. If the only Pokemon they have is active and you Spin Storm them and they disappear and you automatically win. Again, very situational. It costs 3 energy, which is a decent amount of energy, so I would be wary of powering up, Pidgeotto, and then Pidgeot. But it's something that you could do, and I think something that would really surprise your opponent, because I don't think this particular attack with Pidgeot is used very often. So I think Pidgeotto's better just to stay at Pidgeotto, because you have that drawing mechanic with Pidgeotto. Going up to Pidgeot is kind of unnecessary, but maybe for that 5% of the time, you might want to do that. So, very, very situational Pokemon right here. I have one lame Pokemon, and that's Dragonair. Dragonair is a necessity in this deck because it leads you up to Dragonite, but what Dragonair has is just not that great. They have like a 1 colorless Tail Whip that does 20 damage, which is fine, with 100 HP, which seems like a good amount of HP, but the thing is you're trying not to get him killed. And everyone on Earth is going to know that you're trying to get up to Dragonite after Dragonair. So Dragonair is going to have a huge target on their back, because nobody wants to see Dragonite. And so with 100 HP, someone like Empoleon, if Dragonair sitting on the bench, could just be sniped away. Sniped right out of existence with Dragonair, with Empoleon. And other people are going to be gunning for Dragonair. So Dragonair, I think if he had 110 HP, I think that would be better for him, and just make everyone else on Earth miserable, because then this deck would be even stronger. The Destructive Whirlpool says discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Anytime you can discard energy from your opponent Pokemon, that is huge. It's a huge thing in standard format. In Theme, you don't see it very often because not very many cards have this ability. However, it costs 4 energy to pull off. Does 70 damage. It's just too expensive. I just don't see this attack ever going off. It's an amazing one, but it's just not going to be used. You're rarely going to see it. You're going to use it once every 1,000 times, 1,000 games. So I think Dragonair is kind of lame. You just want to get past Dragonair as fast as you can to Dragonite. Moving on to the trainers. Okay, the trainer cards, we're just going to go over them. I usually group the trainers into like a top tier, mid tier, and bottom tier grouping. But there's no wasted trainers here. They are all good in this deck. There's nothing that I would say is terrible. I'm sure you could change things out for other cards, but the ones they actually added into this deck are perfectly great and perfectly fine. Let's talk about each one. So we have the Energy Recycle system, which gets energy from your discard pile into your hand, or gets 3 basic energy back into your deck. Great card for this deck. This deck is so energy dependent. Any cards that can get energy back through to you is going to be a key card. And guess what? This card is an item. So it's not a supporter. So you can use this, after use a supporter card 2 or before, great card. Pokemon Communication. Good card for any deck, where you can just trade out a Pokemon you have in your hand that you might not need to get another one. So let's say you're trying to get up to Dragonite, he's somewhere in your deck, you can use Pokemon Communication to trade some Pokemon in your hand for maybe that Dragonite that you've been wanting. Or Thundurus Tornadus, if you're trying to set that combo up, Pokemon Communication. Great card to do that. Switch, I mean, I don't even have to talk about Switch. Switch is useful in every deck to be able to switch out your active with someone on your bench. I mean, it's just one of the top tier cards that you gotta have. Bug Catcher is an interesting proposition. You know, you can draw 2 cards with it, and then if you get a good coin flip, you get 2 more cards. So, you know, it's very much like your typical draw 3 cards. That's like, your draw 3 is a guarantee. This card has a little bit of play to it, where sometimes you get 4, sometimes you only get 2. You know, I would say, I think it's fine to have. I think it's a fun addition where you get to flip a coin and maybe you get 4 cards, and that's going to help you out quite a bit. Cynthia is great. I love Cynthia. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6. Great for recycling your hand. If you don't have a hand, if you just have Cynthia, then she turns into 6 cards. Great way to cycle through your deck. Cynthia is great in all these themed decks. Now, Fisherman is the nastiest card in this deck. Nastiest. It says, put 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. Into your hand. Not into your deck. Into your hand. If you have Dragonite out and you use Fisherman, Fisherman's going to get you all the energy that you need, especially later on in the game, and you can just plop it on however you want, onto Dragonair or onto his friends, and just start wiping out your opponent. Just wipe them out like that. Wipe them out. Easy, easy. Fisherman is such a great card for this deck. We got How. How lets you draw 3 cards, especially in a format like theme format. Being able to draw more cards is always great. Having Hows early is awesome. Same thing with Lily. Lily helps you draw cards. And I would say in this deck with Pokemon Fan Club, it's even more essential than in other decks, because Pokemon Fan Club can get you Tornadus and Thundurus. You can get both of those basic, beefy Pokemon with this one card. But if you already have one, then you can grab the other one, and then any other Pokemon you want. It's such a good card for this particular deck. Tate and Lisa, always a nice option in any theme deck where you can either shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 5 cards, or have it be like a switching card where you can switch active and benched. It's a great way to have a little bit of choice. You know, it's a supporter, so it's not like Switch where you can just switch back and forth all the time, and you don't get as many cards into your hand as some of the other supporters, but because it can have both abilities, both are slightly crippled, just a little bit. But I'm very happy to have Tate and Lisa in my hand, because that helps me cycle through the deck. So like I said, all of the trainer cards are actually very good, very strong, and I would be happy just playing any of those in the deck. I don't think I would take any of them out. Maybe you could add in some, but taking any of them out, I think they're all pretty good. Okay, we're on to the wishing portion of this deck review strategy. And honestly, I don't have a lot of wishes for this deck. I mean, this deck gives you what you really need to win, and I mean, the only thing that isn't that great about it is it kind of plays slowly. Whenever I play this deck, I feel like I'm playing against an opponent that takes a long time. And I understand that, because when I play this deck, I tend to take longer to think about my next move, because this deck gives you so many options. It's like almost too many options. You don't need that. Well, you do need those options, but that's what makes this deck really, really good, because it gives you so many options. This deck, I would say, isn't best for people who are more at the beginning level of Pokemon, because you really have to know the cards in this deck in order to really make it well and fight it against other opponents. So in that way, you know, I guess I wish it could be a little bit more accessible to the newer player, but at the same time, it's a deck you can graduate up to and you can play and really enjoy. So I don't really have any like wishes for this deck because I think it's already one of the top tier theme decks that you can play. Now, I do have a wish, a personal wish. I wish I would play better against this deck. For whatever reason, when I play this deck, I'm terrible at it. When I play against this deck, I lose to it. So this deck just makes me mad. I wish I wasn't as mad as I am when I play against this deck, but it is what it is. It's totally cool. Okay, we're going to step away from the computer and talk a little bit about strategies to use. And I would say for the initial strategy, you're going to want to get your drawing Pokemon out. This is good in any deck, but you're going to want to get like Pidgey out so you can draw cards, or Grimer out, and then evolve Pidgey to Pidgeotto so that you can draw more and more cards. This deck is hugely reliant on getting cards into your hands, and so the earlier you can start that process, the better. For example, I would not put Dratini out there thinking, ooh, he's gonna get into Dragonite. No, put those other Pokemon out where they can draw you cards early, and then try to retreat them or switch them out if you know they're gonna get killed off or die, get knocked out. After you're feeling pretty comfortable, and you know it's a little bit after the first few turns, some Pokemon you might want to consider having out, you know, getting rid of your drawing cards like Grimer or like Pidgey, are Tornadus and Thundurus. Right? We talked about those a lot in the Pokemon section. They are great cards. You're going to want to use Pokemon Fan Club to get the one that you don't have, or to get both of them out. Look for them in your deck. Their attacks, you know, they don't cost a lot to power up, but they do significant damage to your opponent. So they are a scary duo to have out, and I hate seeing them on the field of play whenever I play this deck. So they are scary. So if you are playing the deck, those are the ones you want to have out. You're going to be able to take out your opponent. Another Pokemon you want sort of sitting in the back is Lantern. So Lantern, as you know, can start soaking up energy from Pokemon that get knocked out. So as Pokemon in the front get knocked out, their energy doesn't have to go to the discard pile. It can go to Lantern. And Lantern, when he powers himself up, can either deal 70 damage and keep the energy he has, or deal 140 damage and of course lose the electric energy. But that could win you the game. That could knock out an opponent's Pokemon that's giving you a ton of trouble, or his main attacker. Could totally turn the tide of the battle. Lantern is somebody you want to time correctly so that the game swings into your favor, or that just outright wins you the game. And of course, another person you want in the back, or another Pokemon you want in the back, is Dratini, then Dragonair, and then Dragonite. Okay, of course, try to get to Dragonite as quickly as you can. That's going to give you such an advantage in energy. Because of Dragonite's ability to just lay down energy with ability per turn without having to worry about the one energy per turn rule, you're going to just be so much faster than your opponent. So you're going to want to have a big hand, you're going to want Dragonite to have tons of energy, and then you get to decide, are you going to attack with Dragonite, or are you going to use Dragonite to power up other Pokemon that you have to do the fighting for you. It's going to be situation to situation in the games that you play. But Dragonite is going to help you immensely, no matter if he's out front attacking or in the back, sort of as a support piece. A huge support piece, but a support piece. And don't be afraid to put Dragonite out in front because of his enormous hit points. Use Fisherman to get more energy, and then use Dragonite to put that energy down, and you're going to win in no time. So moving on to the strengths of this deck, number one, Dragonite. I just gushed about Dragonite, and it's all true. Dragonite has got to be one of the best Pokemon you can use in the entire theme deck format. With a huge amount of HP, with a huge amount of damage, and a great ability, Dragonite deserves to be the star of this deck. And if you can get Dragonite out into this game, I think you're gonna win more than you lose, because Dragonite is just that powerful and just that good of a Pokemon. Very few Pokemon can stand toe-to-toe with what Dragonite can do. Number 2, Tornadus and Thundurus. Again, a couple of Pokemon we've been talking a whole lot about. There are not very many duos like Tornadus and Thundurus in any of the theme decks. These guys work so well together, and they're basic Pokemon, and their attack costs aren't super tremendous, plus they get bonuses for having each other out. It's annoying to play against these guys. So if you want to be the annoyer, you get these guys out, you play this deck, and they are going to be a major strength for you. And finally, I think the engine that drives this deck, the strength is it can draw. It has plenty of Pokemon that can get you cards into your hand. You have a great set of attackers, you have a great set of supporters, and of course Dragonite can be an attacker or a supporter. It's just such a balanced deck that gives you so many options that when you're facing an opponent, if you've been playing Pokemon for a while, you can actually see what they're trying to do and just pick what you want to do from your deck that can directly oppose what they're doing. That's the power of this deck. It can oppose your opponent and stop them dead in their tracks. Okay, on to weaknesses. There aren't very many weaknesses in this deck. That's for sure. Okay, not very many weaknesses at all. But I will say, if you are unable to draw energy into your hand, Dragonair does become quite useless. He becomes a huge sort of sponge for attacks. You know, he can soak up a lot of damage, but he's not going to be doing much. He's not going to be able to fight, he's not going to be able to distribute energy, and that is kind of useless. So if this deck can't get the energy out, if it's like stuck at the bottom or stuck in the prizes, it's going to be a bad time for you. So that's one of the weaknesses that this deck could potentially run into. The second one is, with Tornadus and Thundurus, as good as they are, they do have their specific weaknesses. So Thundurus is weak against fighting, and Tornadus is weak against lightning. So you're going to have to make sure you pay attention, because your opponent will be gunning for them. I see Soaring Storm quite often in tournaments and in play online, so it's a deck that a lot of people will use. So they know the deck. They know when those two are together, it's trouble. So they're going to be trying to wipe one of them out so that they're not as powerful. Just watch out for that and know which one's weak to what. Okay, otherwise one of them could potentially just get knocked out faster than you would like. And the only other weakness is really with Dratini and Dragonair. I think they are kind of weak Pokemon, which I guess balances out Dragonite, because Dragonite is so good. But the two Pokemon that lead up to Dragonite, they're not that great. They can be knocked out, and they're going to have huge targets on their back because nobody wants to see Dragonite. Okay, except for you who's playing the deck. So I would say those are your weaknesses. People will know that's who they need to target. So just be very, very careful with them. So overall, Soaring Storm is such a powerful deck. I do think you need to have experience with it. You need to play this deck. You need to have some Pokemon experience as well, because this deck can really serve you in situations to knock out your opponent. It gives you exactly what you need, and if you know the combinations of this deck, you can put those out to take your opponent out. This deck can also win with sheer force of power, because some of the Pokemon in this deck are just wrecking balls and they can just destroy. So, what is my overall grade? This deck gets an A. It's a great deck. I think one of the best theme decks you can get. I would 100% pick up this deck. to learn and to use. It's going to win you a lot of games, guys. I just truly believe it. You just have to really know the deck. Some of the decks play just, you can turn off your brain and play it. Like Relentless Flame, I think you can just play that deck. It doesn't take a lot of skill or thought. It just can steamroll sometimes. This deck, it doesn't do that. You need to know who you want to grab, and you got to keep track of all the little things that happen, like putting energy on Lantern when someone gets knocked out. Okay? Making sure you use the ability of Pidgeotto every turn. Things like that you have to keep track of in your mind. So it's a little bit more intensive on the brain to play. But if you know what you're doing with a skilled player, I think this deck can really own a lot of other decks. Let me know what you thought of this review. Do you agree? Do you think this deck is that great? Let me know. I'd love to hear your experiences with this deck, your play with this deck. If you've played against this deck, any of that, I would love to hear and discuss with you. If you made it this far in the video, thank you. I know this is a long video, but I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.